Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to declare the agenda briefing open at 12:59. I'll just run through some preliminaries before we start. Just please bear in mind that if you have mobile phones, can you please switch them off? If you need to take a call or make a call, could you please leave the room? And in the event of fire or any other adversities, please exit either to the right or left through the doors immediately to the outside. I'd also like to acknowledge the Balladong Noongar people, who are the traditional custodians of the land where we meet today, and the Yuid and Whadjuk people, who are also traditional custodians of respective lands within the Shire of Tujay. I'd like to pay my respect to their elders past, present and emerging. I'd also like to say, before we really get into it, welcome everybody. And I'd like our viewers at home who are watching the meeting via the live stream, that our public gallery ought to be aware that you can be seen on the live stream viewing now as well. So we have a new system in, and I'm expecting that we will have a very improved quality for those that cannot attend. We have not received any apologies or councillors are present, nor approved leave of absence or applications for leave of absence. Are there any disclosures of interest, councillors, that haven't been made yet? If not, then we will move through to public question time. Except, I don't think we have anybody here who is going to ask the question. So if we have no public question time, then we'll move through to the body of the report. And the first item on the agenda is 9.1.1, which is 5 tiny cabins, Lot 2, Gamalling Tujay Road, Dumbarton. Do we have any questions or clarifications, councillors? We had received a number of questions that have been put in. Councillor Jury, you submitted 2 questions. Would you care to read out your question and the answer to that? Do you have those in front of you? You can read them off the screen if you would like.
First, I'd like to ask, changing the land use from holiday accommodation to tourism, it's caravan park and campsites. My question is, with that change of classification and approval, will it give the proponents the opportunity to establish camping grounds on the property in the future? Thank you.
Would you like to read the answer? Or the officer, would you care to provide the...
Thank you, Councillor Jury. The proposed land use is defined as follows. Tourist development means a building or a group of buildings forming a complex other than a bed and breakfast, a caravan park or holiday accommodation, and it's used to provide short-term accommodation for guests and on-site facilities for the use of guests and facilities for the management of the development. In answer to your question, no, it will not give the proponents the opportunity to establish camping grounds in the future under the current planning framework. Caravan park, which takes its definition from Section 5 of the Caravan and Camping Grounds Act, means an area of land on which caravans and camps are situated for habitation. This is an X-use in the rural zone under the Shire of Tujay Local Planning Scheme number 4. The only way that this could happen in the future would be if the scheme changed through a scheme amendment.
Councillor Jury, would you like to ask your next question?
Yes. Environmental considerations, Table 2.2, native vegetation modifications, clearing potential environment identified. Threatened ecological communities, it says to be confirmed, declared rare flora to be confirmed, last identified as significant through a local biodiversity strategy, intramaps to be confirmed. Do we have any indication as to a time frame for these surveys to be carried out and reported to the Shire?
Through the chair, thank you. I did actually hear back from the applicant shortly before I raced to this meeting. He's provided me with some mapping that indicates that there is no threatened ecological communities or declared rare fauna on any of those sites.
Thank you.
Just take a moment. Councillor Pearce, would you care to provide your question on notice?
Well, it was quite involved. Basically, that the application is from Bingara. It's a company, and the search title reveals its address is in Victoria with only one employee. And however, the address on the certificate of title was Post Office Beacon, so possibly an absentee landowner. The other application, I'll combine them, is a 2J residence. So my concern was, how will the cabins be managed? And as the application, the cleaners will be employed to service the cabins, but that doesn't actually say about management. And also a part of that when the development was advertised, and I do understand there is a time frame as per the regulations, and the officer did provide that for me, but when we receive an application in December, when many farmers are busy, and then January, when a lot of people are away, my concern is that perhaps sometimes people miss significant advertisements in the paper, on Facebook or on the Shire's website. So how can we as a council address this issue? So that basically were that questions, I think, and the manager for planning.
Mr De Vos, as this is your department, would you care to respond?
Certainly, thank you. I'll just address the application name and so on. Really, as long as the name is correct, that's the thing that we need to make sure is that we sign off on, and so that was correct. Where they are physically addressed doesn't have any bearing on whether we should or shouldn't be approving an application moving forward. I do note your comments about management of the property, and as will be shown in other responses to questions later on, we're actually seeking to request a management plan be put into place by the applicant, and we've already been in discussion with the applicant about this, so that's coming up later. With regards to the public comment period, I certainly take that on board. We're in a bit of a quandary because the regulations, which have been prepared by the state government, actually say the acceptable period of time for this is 14 days. We've actually gone to 29 days, which is even beyond our own policy. In answer to your question, the only way we can really do that is by altering the policy and actually putting those specific dates, so Christmas period and Easter, I think I would suggest, is the other one, and actually formalising it that way. But I guess the other thing that we need to note is we're relying on the goodwill and grace of the applicant to actually agree with those extensions. We have to get it in writing from them. 9 times out of 10 they will, and they'll be fine with it. But the Shire has experienced a case in the past where basically it was deemed to be refused because it went over that period of time, and they took us straight to the tribunal over it, which we want to try and avoid.
Thank you. I did notice that in your response, I think that's what you're referring to, this management plan. Do you envisage that will be an amendment to the condition in the officer's recommendation?
Yes, that's correct.
Think.
Councillor Pearce, you did have another question. Did you want to... we've answered that as part of this. Okay, thank you.
I did ask also that in reviewing the application that there is a bushfire plan and was to be reviewed annually. Well, my concern was that how will we as a shire make sure that that is reviewed annually and it's just not left. And the manager of planning, assistant manager, didn't respond to that.
Mr DeVos, would you care to respond?
Yes, absolutely. So we would consider that a compliance matter as we would with all of the development conditions that get put through. So with regards to bushfire compliance, that would be delegated to our bushfire control officers, the rangers or the SESM, to be able to review how the plan is being implemented on an annual basis.
Well, just further to that, I understand that they will be responsible for it, but what process will be there to ensure that it is complied with? The reason for that is because we've had development applications before, for example, extractive industries, where they've been asked to produce a surveyor certificate about extraction, and some of them have never been completed. So what process will be there that this ensures that that plan will be reviewed?
Well, that's obviously an administrative function that we're looking at. I guess one way that you could do it is to formalise it as part of the condition, that a report is provided back. I don't think it would necessarily require it to come back to council, but to the attention of the CEO, just so if you wanted to, we can do it that way, and that will actually be a formal condition then. But I mean, normally these things are just mattered from, are done through our day-to-day administration.
I think that is a good condition to consider due to the possibility of fire, and that could be a risk that we need to be aware of.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Ruth, and you also had a question on notice.
My first question was, is there a permanent residence on the property for the property owner or property manager? And that was related to the fact that there doesn't appear to be anything on site to go with Part C under tourism development, which is for the management of the development on site. Instead of using tourist development, could a new classification be added under holiday accommodation to include the tiny cabins?
Through the chair, I believe I actually did answer that question. One of the properties does have a permanent residence, the other doesn't. With both of them, though, when we look at that aspect of the definition, the facilities for the management of the development, that doesn't necessarily, the way I interpret that is that it doesn't necessarily denote a physical dwelling of sorts. Facilities could mean a shed for holding tools, for example. The other aspect of the definition is I don't think it's a requirement that all aspects are present at any one time, only that this type of definition provides the flexibility for those elements to be included as part of the proposal. However, should the applicant be of a mind to expand their development in the future, given the classification that it has, it would still require a development approval or a change of the existing approval through the Shire.
Thank you. Can I just add to that? I think my concern was about these cabins on a property with an absentee landowner and the management, if anything happens. How does that get managed?
Yes, so if councillor can refer back to a previous answer where I've suggested the management plan. Now, the management plan will actually outline a whole range of things that we expect management of, and that includes complaints management and risk and so on. So, and then that would become part of the substantive approval that's in place.
Councillor, please.
Just moving on from that, next week when we look at this item in the agenda, will we have the management plan before us before we debate this item?
Through the chair, yes, it's in the works. We have specified, though, the way I've written the condition is prior to the commencement of the development, which is still a satisfactory way to proceed with it.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Councillor McEwen.
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, just one question on this item. Going back to one of your previous answers, you mentioned an application where time had expired and the application was deemed to have been refused. What are the implications of that as an appeal?
My previous experience with it is that it doesn't get heard de novo. I think it's purely the way the tribunal would look at it would be that we've just determined it as an organisation as a refusal. Then it would go to a mediation, and then hopefully a mediated outcome could be reached. And then if that's not the case, then it would go to a hearing, in which case it is heard de novo.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I'm just trying to work out the difference between the Shire refusing an application, in which case we'd probably have to give a reason, and the Shire being deemed to have refused.
That's a very good point. I think the reason given is that it would just be consistent with that clause in the regulations, that it's deemed refused. And the regulations don't specify that a reason needs to be given from that point. So,
Councillors, are there any further questions towards this item? If not, we'll then move on to the next item of business, which was reconsideration of Section 31 reconsideration of Lot 77 Bajording Road, Bajording. Councillors are all familiar with the details of this item. I believe Councillor Jury, and I must correct myself, it's not questions on notice, questions that have been submitted. So, Councillor Jury, you had two questions that I can see that you had submitted. Would you care to read them? And Mr De Vos, you will be again asked to respond.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 9.1.2, Lot 77, Bajording Road. Point B, the wording is able, replace it to be able to drive. It was just a corrective there. And point D, in the recommendation, it says no revegetation. I just ask, is Mr Maxted remove vegetation during the construction of the dams, which events? Thank you.
thank you for your question. When we did the site inspection at the mediation, it was unclear what the existing vegetation state was prior to the unauthorised works occurring. It was considered that the best option from an environmental perspective was to let nature do its thing and to begin to recolonise the area rather than let the applicant go in and revegetate, as we considered that was potentially more damaging or more risky to it. So we didn't really have a benchmark position, but we knew that vegetation had been removed.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Pearce.
Just one small question. So council has been asked to consider the office recommendation. In the recommendation, was this virtually what we just had in our mediation or our meeting with the parties?
Yes, that's correct, it was.
Further to the question of Councillor Jury, I just noticed that on drawing number GALP 001, which was on the attachments on page 128, that there we have struck out a number of notations on that map, but to remove dam wall and infill have not been struck out. I assume that the officer's recommendation that there will be that the remaining dams, numbered 2 through to 5, will remain unmodified to allow for nature to run its course, is actually stands, and this is an oversight on the map. Am I correct?
I believe that's correct. We can get that fixed up.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Any further questions to this item, councillors? Thank you. We'll move to the next item of business, which is 9 tiny cabins on lot 200 and 400, Woodendale Road, Noonile. Councillor Jury, you have asked a question to this item. Would you care to proceed?
Thank you. It's an amendment of a word just being corrected from complete to compete.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Ruthen, you had a question?
The question I had on this item was the same as the question I had on 9.1.1, and I've received the answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Maria, are there any further questions for that item? No. Councillors, have you... Councillor Pearce, you wish to speak?
In relation to this item, as compared with the first one with the 5 cabinets, will we also be having an amendment that we have a management plan for this tiny cabinets also, please?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Any further questions on this item? If not, we move to item 9.14, lot 97, Beaufort Street, West 2J, a 5-dog application. Councillor Wrench, you have a question?
Yes, my question was in relation to the 5 dogs and only 2 being registered, and a query about the other 3. And would those registrations come across onto those dogs once the application was approved?
Mr De Vos.
Yes, so only 2 dogs are allowed to be registered at a premises until such time if council approves between 3 and 6, and then the remaining dogs can be registered.
Councillor Wrench, you had a second question?
Second question was in relation to the wording of point 5 on the officer's recommendation, following number of dogs permitted, change will be reduced to 2, rather than the revert to lesser number provided in the clause, just to provide clarity.
Mr De Vos, do you wish to respond?
Yes, through the chair, I actually referred this through to Rangers to have a look at who have provided the response, but I shall read it out. I agree that the statement may require further direction, but in the event of a local law changing, it may be a good idea to refer to the local law rather than the number. Please find a few options for the wording below. The third statement doesn't refer to the local laws, but may explain it better. The first option is upon the death or disposal of one or more of the above dogs, the permit will cease and the number of dogs permitted will reduce to 2. The second, upon the death or disposal of one or more of the dogs, the permit will cease and the number of dogs will revert to the number of dogs limited as per the Shire of 2J Dogs local law. And the third option is an approved 3 to 6 dog permit is to only regard the dogs listed above on the permit, and upon the death or disposal of one or more of the listed dogs, they shall be removed and not be subsequently replaced by any dogs.
Thank you. Councillor Ruthen, you have 2 questions that I can see.
Yes, I did, thank you. My questions have been answered. So the street address is 65 Beaufort Street, and how long has the applicant lived at the address? And that's since August last year. I have another question now, and it's going from those 3 recommendations for changes to the wording. So, sorry Maria, can you take it back down? Thank you. If we went with any of those, the application is for 5 dogs, and so if on the death or disposal of one or more of the listed dogs, so say one dies, does that mean that the applicant has to reapply to have 4 dogs?
Please bear with me while I just examine that condition. I believe the way it's worded, that would be correct. Yep.
There was another question for Councillor Ruthen.
My question was, were all of the dogs registered in New South Wales prior to the move to WA? And the answer I received was yes. And further to that, I was curious about whether they were approved in a residential area, because the zoning of this property is special residential.
Through the Chair, I don't actually have that information available. We can certainly ask the applicants and provide further clarification.
Councillors, further to this item, are there any further questions? Councillor Pearce, please.
Yes, Marie, if you would just scroll up to where you've got the 3 options, you've actually got 5, 5, 5 there.
Yeah.
Could they be clarified to 1, 2, 3, or no?
Through the Chair, if I may, they are all options for the same clause in the officer recommendation, so it will be one of the 3.
Thank you.
Any further questions, councillors? If not, we'll move to item 9.2.1, community funding policy. We've not received any questions, so are there any questions from the floor with regard to this item? If there are no questions, we'll move on to item 9.2.2, the financial monthly statements for December 2021 and January 2022. Councillor Ruthen has submitted a question here. Councillor Ruthen, would you care to respond to your question?
Thank you. My first question, or my only question on the financial statements, was is the datascape issue likely to delay the budget review?
The inability to report the financials through Datascape is not expected to delay the mid-year budget review. It's just that it will take a bit more effort to pull the data.
Thank you.
And may I clarify that it will mean a bit of a difference in the presentation of the review than is what is normally provided. Is that correct? Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor McEwen.
Thank you, Madam President. On the first page of the financial report, well, it's maybe the second page. It's the first page of numbers anyway, page 165 in the attachments. Under operating expenses, operating expense, the fourth column, let me explain this. The second column gives the year-to-date budget for each of those operating expense items. The third column gives the year-to-date actual, and the fourth column tells you whether we've overspent or underspent on the items listed. And nearly all of the items we have underspent on operating expenses. For example, transport and infrastructure, which is the third last item, we've underspent by over $1 million. But for some reason, and I've asked this question about governance before, for some reason we've overspent on governance by $737,000. Can someone explain how we've done that, please?
Mrs. Bateman, would you care to respond?
Sure. So the ups and downs across the different programs is a result of being unable to run depreciation effectively in Datascape, and also the overhead allocations that are generally done on a monthly basis, but we've been unable to do those effectively through the Datascape processes.
So if I'm right in the way I'm thinking about this, so governance has been used as some sort of a suspense account, is that correct?
Sorry. So governance is a holding area for overhead. So when it comes to wages, for example, not all of our wages are posted to administration. They're allocated across the other programs in the budget.
Thank you. It's taken me 18 months to get that answer. That's great. So, okay. So but on operating, we've underspent by $1 million, total operating expenditure. If we go to the next page, for capital expenses, we've had a total capital expenditure year to date of $668,000, but there are no year-to-date budgets for any of that. Can you explain that one?
So when we prepared our budget, we didn't have the project time frames in place, so we didn't have. So we have an annual budget, but we didn't break it down to months. So that was because of the timing of the budget adoption, and the not being able to get our tenders out and our programs.
So in reality, at the bottom of that capital expenses, it says we've overspent by $668,000. That's not actually the case, is it?
No, it's not.
Okay. So that carries on to the bottom of the page, where we have a net closing deficit of $365,000. So that's not the case either, is it?
No, if we reviewed the year-to-date budgets for capital, we can amend that at the mid-year review.
I know I'm not supposed to make suggestions here, but so I'll make them later. Yeah.
Councillor, before you progress, I'm just finding where you've mentioned the closing budget. What was the figure again?
Yeah, sorry, Madam President. Down the bottom of that second page.
So page 167.
166?
Ah,
Yeah.
yep, 365,000,
Yeah,
thank you,
Yeah, okay. I'll discuss it offline, yeah.
thank you. Are there any further questions regarding this item, please, councillors? I can see you deliberating there, Councillor McEwen.
No, I've got a lot of questions, but I understand the difficulty that we're having with Datascape, which is giving rise to some of the questions, so... No, look, I'll leave it. I may say something next week, but I'll leave it for now, yeah.
So what I would recommend is to have that conversation perhaps with the Manager of Finance or with the CEO, so you feel more satisfied prior to the OCM. Because sometimes it's very difficult to answer that within the OCM when the data is perhaps complex to be retrieved. Yep. I think we all appreciate the difficulties that everybody is going through at the time. So, moving forward to the just lost my place here. List of payments. Councillors, item number 923. Do we have any questions that have arisen? Yes, we have. Councillor Wrench, please.
Mine was more of a general observation that we have a number of different accounting fees, bank fees and such forth that show through our different accounts each month, and my query was, have we negotiated with our providers to see if they can waive some of those fees or look at other options that don't actually carry those fees?
Thank you, Mrs. Bateman. Would you like to respond?
Sure, I'll read it from the screen. So we haven't requested the fees be waived, but we did query the issue with the overdraft fee back in October. The response was whether you have a high or a low overdraft balance, you will always pay the same fee. We also pay fees to the Commonwealth Bank for use of the EFTPOS machines. And they are higher, I don't know if that was in your question, they're higher in these months for November because that's when the rates were due, and they'll also be higher for when the instalments are also due. So they do go up and down depending on the number of transactions that are processed.
Do you have any questions further to that, Councillor Wrench, or have we lost reception?
I guess no questions, but it would be good to sort of, see what options are available.
Yes.
It would save us a few dollars.
Certainly something we need to think about with budget. Councillor Ruthin.
Mine sort of is related to Councillor Wrench's question, and it was about the numerous payments of very small amounts, sometimes less than $1, to Paymate for the... Sorry, Maria, can you... Yep. Would it be more efficient for these to be consolidated into one payment per week, fortnight or month? And add to that, when we're talking about bank fees, if we pay extra fees for the number of transactions, is that impacting on our bank fees? If there's numerous individual payments being made?
I can definitely look into what impact those small fees have on our bank fees in our bank accounts. In terms of consolidating those smaller payments into weekly or monthly amounts, there would also have to be a reconciliation process attached to that. So at the moment, it's quite easy to reconcile the small items straight off the bank statement, as opposed to consolidating and then going through to check that everything balances.
Thank you, I understand. I worked in the bank.
Councillor Ruthin, you have another question there.
Yes.
Actually, it's two.
Okay. Are the water account charges for the Shire's leased properties, in other words, the ones that the Shire leases out, passed on to the lessees, for example, O'Reilly's Cottage and the bank building, etc.?
Yes, they are. The water is on charge to lessees in accordance with the applicable lease clauses.
Okay. Apart from the Doogie Park water cost, the next most expensive water payment is for the old depot in Harper Road. Is this for the men's shed, and can we have an explanation of this seemingly excessive amount? Thank you.
Sure. So the majority of the water at Harper Road is used for Shire operations and services. So Water Corp are currently investigating the number of sewerage services attached to that bill. The water usage for that bill was only around $8. So the rest relates to services.
Maria, would you like to just capture the cost of that? Would you care to just repeat the cost for Maria so she can enter that in the question?
Hopefully my memory is correct. I think it was $8.19 for water usage, and the rest was for 41 fixtures which are being investigated.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce, you had a question?
My question related to the McLeod's lawyers' advice that we received. We had a dispute with ADCO on the water, and I just would like to know what was the outcome of the advice and has it been settled?
I will defer to the CEO for this matter.
Thank you, Madam President. The matter has not been settled. The advice from the lawyers was that there was insufficient evidence to pursue at this time, and so the suggestion has been that accurate monitoring takes place of water usage over the next 12 months, because there may be a possibility of being able to retrospectively put in a claim.
Thank you.
When you're ready, Maria, can you scan down? Thank you. Councillor Pearce, I believe you've got a series of questions here. Would you like to have them?
I do believe the Manager of Finance might have answered these, because I noticed that there were a large amounts for the CBA, and now she's indicated this is when we have rates payments and the FPOS machine has been used. That would be why the other months were so small when the machine's not used, so thank you.
Maria, can you just scan back to the last question there of Councillor Pearce so I can check? There was one further down. No, down. Bit further.
I just have asked this question previously, and I have been informed by the Finance Department that anything that we incur as expenses in fines, DFAs will be refunded. But my question was, how does the Finance Department achieve this? Is DFAs invoiced for these fees that we actually pay?
Mrs. Bateman.
So those payments would be funded through the local government grants scheme for the bushfire brigades and SES services operating grants. So they allocate those grants at the beginning of the year, and for 21-22 we were allocated 237,000. So every quarter they pay us. So throughout the year we spend the money, and every quarter we will receive an instalment.
Thank you. And my last question related to Space to Co. It's an online booking service which we pay $165 per month, and I'm led to believe that is how people access and book Shire facilities. I have raised concerns, as a couple of people have said to me they have difficulty in using this system, and I'm just saying that my question is, we are charged $165, but have we remedied the process that people can use this system more efficiently and not have problems?
Mrs. Bateman.
So Space to Co have offered some solutions. We're in discussions with them at the moment about, other options, even to the point of looking at, if this could be managed in-house or through the Shire's website. But at the moment, we have a meeting scheduled with Space to Co to work through some of these issues.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions on this item? Okay. If they're not, we'll move to item 9.3.1, Governance Review Action Plan Progress Report. Are there any questions arising beside Councillor Pearce's question? Councillor Pearce?
Yes, in the officer's report, it was mentioned that we were to workshop this review that has happened, but we didn't have the time to review it. So my question really is, does the officer see, are there any significant changes or review that would benefit from a workshop before council debates this item next week?
The report is actually a report on the progress, so there are no changes to the review plan that was adopted by council late last year, in September last year. Or the only thing that has happened is that there has been commentary against the progress on each of the actions.
Thank you.
Any further questions, councillors? I'll move to item 9.3.2, Policy Review Process. I believe we have a question here from Councillor Jury. Councillor Jury, please proceed.
Thank you. My question is that there's 20 policies to be reviewed, but it shows 25 in the costings. I was wondering how many policies do we actually have that we will be reviewing, and would it make a difference to our advertising costs, please?
Through the Chair, the website lists 23 local planning policies. 20 of these are considered necessary for review. In addition, there are 5 other policies to be created or revoked or reclassified, which will require advertising.
Thank you very much.
Any further questions, councillors? The next item is 9.5.1, Bushfire Advisory Committee recommendations. We've not received any questions preceding the meeting. Have any questions arisen now? If the last item is item 9.5.2, EAC, Native Vegetation Offset for proposed clearing for roadworks. Likewise, we've not received any questions. Councillors, have any questions since arisen? If not, then I will declare.
Sorry, Madam President, if I may just interject.
Certainly.
Councillor McEwen has submitted a number of questions on notice, which haven't been included in the agenda as yet, will be included in the minutes. I have indicated that it may, due to capacity issues, it may be difficult for officers to answer all of the questions in time for the meeting next week. And if that's the case, we would seek leave to take some of those on notice.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your patience, everybody. I will now close the meeting at 1:49 p.m. and thank you for your attendance.